Hello. First of all, one of my more dedicated viewers wrote me a heartfelt little comment about his pet dying, and I wanted to tell everyone that I know how that feels. There's next to nothing more painful in many ways than the death of a pet. And my heart is with you, and indeed with anyone else who's suffering any sort of a bereavement. But I want to get on to this little clip from Styx Hexenhammer. Now, I used to watch Styx quite a lot, and then I stopped watching him because I just couldn't stand seeing that not too hairy chest of his. It really put me off, I have to confess. And then I saw he'd made a video and he's wearing a shirt, so I thought, I'll watch it. And pure gold, thank you, Styx. I hope you don't mind me using this. So here, I'm going to freeze while it'll be that side, won't it? I'll go into freeze while I play this clip for you. All right. That way. Yeah. Take it away, Styx.
Age was a factor in the last presidential election. By the next time around, Trump will be like, 73, 74 or something. He'll be an older man. Hillary Clinton will be the same age. The same is true of the other two people that are at the top. Biden, who is, I believe, 72. I believe he's a couple years older than Trump. And Bernie Sanders, who I believe is 74 already. He's an old man. He's elderly, essentially. No criticism here of the age of any of my viewers, but if someone's going to be in that kind of position, where they have to make a lot of highbrow judgments, potentially. If the president gets woken up at 2 a.m. To the news that Russia's threatening to nuke us or something, I want them to be able to grab something caffeinated. I don't care if they snort a line of cocaine, actually, at that point. I want them to be wide awake and able to make judgments.
What interests me is that he says that he's worried about an old person taking over the job of being president because, well, as he says, 3 o'clock in the morning and somebody dashes into the bedroom and says, "Wake up, President, we've got a mega tsunami hitting New York," or somebody's set off a hydrogen bomb or something. What are we going to do? And he thinks an old person won't be able to deal with that. I want to tell you something, Styx. You couldn't be more wrong. I'm not backing up Hillary Clinton here. I'm not making a speech in favour of old people. I am merely pointing out some facts which seem to have escaped your attention. Well, hang on a minute. Not yours only. Advertisers. Now, when you switch on the television at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I don't know how it is in Australia or America, but in Britain, what do you get? You get adverts for stair lifts, saga holidays, funeral plans, all that sort of thing during daytime television. And then at 3 a.m, you have adverts for, chat lines and aftershave and Red Bull. That's a very strong caffeine drink. Because at 3, what they're not thinking of is that at 3 a.m, the kids are out clubbing. They're not watching television. Who is watching television at 3 a.m? Well, old people. They're up at 3 a.m. making their 4th pee of the night. Old people don't sleep at night. They sleep at 3 in the afternoon when those stair lift adverts are on. Advertisers have no idea what they're doing. Anyway, but Styx has highlighted an important point. I don't know how it happened, but in the United States government at the moment, it's just full of old people. There seems to be no mechanism for older people to sort of filter out. That Dianne Feinstein is as old as God. I don't understand. In Britain, no politician would be that old, and except maybe in the House of Lords. I'm not saying Dianne Feinstein has lost her marbles, although she certainly made a horrific mistake with the Kavanagh thing, but anyone can make a mistake. But I've noticed that there's no sort of mechanism for getting out the old guard, and that's because, I suppose, of the heavy financial burdens that any politician has to take on in America. You have to be well in with all the businesses, and of course the businesses go for what they perceive as the sure thing. In Russia, it was exactly the same, except it wasn't the big businesses financing and the corporations. It was a sort of government structure. And in Russia, they had an old guard as well of people who all belonged in the same clique, and then they died out one by one, and the leaders got older and older and older. I understand Brezhnev didn't even know what he was doing. He was just sort of piloted in to stand at Red Square parades every so often. And the same thing is happening in Saudi Arabia. And why is Saudi important? It's just a heap of sand. Well, it is important. Now, in Russia, the person who took over was Gorbachev, and he was a youngish person. But there were no younger followers coming up until finally there was fragmentation, social breakdown. You couldn't keep a hold of it, and a strongman came out of the secret services, basically. I don't know what it was called at the time. Was it the NKVD or something? Anyway, Putin came up. And he is young enough to keep control, but he's going to go on and on and on. And there won't be any younger people coming up behind him because, as with most dictators, they have to kill the opposition or freeze it out in some way. And that's what Putin has done. So who will follow him? The pattern will probably repeat with a sort of power struggle when he goes for one reason or another. And in Saudi Arabia, the new young Turk is Mohammed bin Sultan, MBS, and he is at the moment busily murdering the opposition. It's not just this Khashoggi guy who went into the Saudi embassy in Turkey. What a joke that was. I'll bet they didn't realise. It's obvious. They have recordings. That embassy must have been bugged to all hell. They probably know when anyone farts in there. And I don't think the Saudis realise that. And they didn't realise that because they're inefficient. And they're inefficient because people get jobs because they know people, not because they actually are any good, because they're part of family that's trusted. And when family isn't trusted, it gets eliminated. I believe at least 3 or 4 Saudi princes who've gone to various European destinations to get away from the family in Saudi with which they disagreed, they've disappeared. This has happened to about 3 or 4 of them. In one instance, somebody was kidnapped. His private plane was flown to Saudi. And we know about this because the staff who were on the plane were kept incommunicado for a few days and then flown back to Europe. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why they weren't finished off. I think they can reckon that they're pretty bloody lucky. Now, why is that important? It's just a family tussle, a medieval tussle in a medieval kingdom. No, because although Saudi is not so important anymore as an oil supplier, it has the people at the top have had enough good sense to realise that they have to get income embedded in other enterprises. So there's a lot of money in European countries. You can see that from the way the British government is behaving with regard to Islam. It's quite obvious that the British government is in the pocket of various, well, if not Saudi, Arab interests of various sorts, because there's just huge amounts of money. If Saudi Arabia and Qatar withdrew all its money from Britain, we almost certainly we're on the brink of bankruptcy. And I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't the same in France and in the United States as well. It's astonishing what we don't know about how near the precipice our countries are, financially speaking. And chaos in Saudi will mean chaos everywhere else. I just want you to remember that. Anyway, back to Styx. Look, Styx, remember, old people, they're up at night. If you want any sort of a problem sorted out at 1 a.m, ring an old person. They're wide awake at that time. I'm very grateful for financial contributions, but if you don't want to give money, you can still help a lot by sharing this and other videos I've made. Also, remember to check your subscription from time to time, as sometimes subscriptions get erased for one reason or another. Till next time.